Welcome back to the Crew and You podcast. I'm excited today because we're going to put Nate in the hot seat about...
Why are we doing that? That wasn't...
He doesn't know it yet, but
that wasn't said ahead of time.
I'm going to make it a hot seat. About discipleship. Don't stop listening now. There's something for everyone. We're going to look at what God's word says, what people think.
Who would stop listening about discipleship? What kind of people you think are... They're like, no, I don't want to hear about that.
Well, let's just dive in. What is
sus topic.
Discipleship? That's not a word we would use apart from the Christian faith. So what is it? What is it not? Start us there, and then I'm questioning you.
Maybe we could also say, like, we're going to talk about either how to help you do this sometimes ambiguous word much better, if you want to be better at making disciples because you love God and you don't know exactly how to do that. We would like to help you. Yes. And you also probably have some misconceptions about what discipleship is.
Mm-hmm. The intent is not for you to be on the hot seat.
Untruths in your head.
That may be a fun outcome. But the intent is maybe to help people not overthink it. Would you say?
That's definitely a part of it. Or to not think wrongly about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. You
probably, more than likely, aren't thinking totally right about discipleship currently. And I'm here to fix it.
Wow. Well, aren't we glad you're here, Pastor? Aren't we glad you're here?
Okay. I'm not here to fix anything. Let's just be clear. But I will hopefully help with things I know.
Just bring clarity to the
conversation. All right. So discipleship. One, the language we use to try to simplify it is simply influencing others towards Jesus. And the reason why we use that language is because the view from the Bible that discipleship is very well-rounded, and it includes, from the very beginning, attempts at evangelism all the way to the maturing of an old saint. So an effort to make a disciple is to take a person wherever they're at on their spiritual journey and influence them toward Jesus. So you can use that for any person in any situation. So even as you're maybe engaging with people who don't know the Lord, you are attempting to make a disciple. So influencing others towards Jesus.
Mm-hmm. And coming from Matthew 28, right? The Great Commission, to go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all that I have commanded you. And behold, I will be with you even to the end of the age. So I say that
Amen.
Because do we want to start with what I think is a surprising take you have that people aren't used to?
Sure.
Okay. Go ahead.
I thought you were going to.
Oh, so something you say a lot is that outreach is discipleship.
Right. Or discipleship is outreach, right?
Explain yourself.
Well, if this is only for those who like live in these Christian circles of this idea that like on one side is outreach, which is like evangelism, service to the poor, going out and doing, let's say, the mission, those are words people would use. And then discipleship is like sitting in a coffee shop, reading the Bible with someone, fighting sin, growing in the faith. And these two things are. And at City Light, we obviously emphasize a ton of outreach. And even in the beginning, we used to get labeled or accused as too outreach-oriented. I'm like, how is that? I will take that label. You can stamp it on my forehead all day long. I receive it. So, but it started to frustrate me because the reason people have this perspective is they have ripped these two ideas apart. And a lot of Christians mistakenly view their discipleship as only like teaching or program oriented around their personal spiritual growth, as opposed to what the Bible presents as making disciples. The Bible doesn't bifurcate these things. The Bible doesn't separate these things. Jesus doesn't like create categories where over here you evangelize the lost and serve the poor. Over here you learn more about the Bible and have victory over sin. Jesus doesn't do that. the Bible doesn't do that. It tells us to make disciples. That includes the whole thing. So even as people, what they don't understand, one of my favorite things to teach through and help people think about is, how did Jesus make disciples? And a great book on this called The Master Plan of Evangelism by Robert Coleman. How did Jesus, you say, okay, what does making disciples look like? Well, I bet Jesus probably did the best job of that. What did Jesus do? And the way Jesus taught people or helped them gain knowledge of even the scriptures was to apply it in front of their face while they're attempting to serve or make disciples. So the way I think about it is, Jesus' classroom was the world. And it's not bad to have, so to speak, a classroom or environments where people are only learning the Bible, obviously. But it's the idea that the way Jesus makes disciples and the way he wants us to make disciples is by serving, in the sense, and learning and serving and doing evangelism and growing in my faith as I do that. The idea being that I become more like Jesus the more I do those things, not necessarily the more I learn in my head. And so that's where people got to get, Jesus wants you doing and like living this stuff out. Mm-hmm. And that's going to turn you into a disciple. So the idea is being like, okay, as you come do, let's just say people would come to do outreach at City Light, and they would still classify that as outreach, as something they do for someone else. Mm-hmm. As opposed to an integral part of their own formation. Like, as I come serve, I'm becoming someone. As I come share the gospel, I'm becoming a disciple. I'm being discipled. So people had the idea of I'm being discipled, like Nate's sitting down with me. We have a curriculum and a 6-week thing we're reading through, and we text each other once a week. That's fine to do. Jesus views discipleship as, we're going to reach the world. You're coming along with me. And as you do these things, you become more like me. And so people just, for some reason, don't have that category in their head. Mm-hmm. And I have spent years now trying to train people into thinking, if you come serve, you are becoming a disciple. So if someone said, what's your discipleship program? One of the things I would say is, it's service, outreach, evangelism. Like, this is part of how you become a disciple.
Okay, he's passionate, folks, and people do push back on this for different reasons that maybe are worth pulling apart.
They don't push back for long because their arguments don't hold up, but sure.
Yeah.
They try.
But, how about this part of the verse that says, teaching them to observe all I've commanded? So let's say we're doing outreach together. Someone comes to faith in the Lord. They know nothing.
Sure.
So are you against Christianity 101 classes? How are people being trained in theology?
I hate Christianity. No.
We can't just be at outreach events. And then you're saying we're doing it together. What does doing it together look like, or should look like? Is the way of Jesus, that part. And that is a lot of what people are saying, discipleship should be, is kind of like maybe doing life together, which then you say, no, that's community, not discipleship. So how do you speak to those things? How are we teaching them his ways? Is it all on the job training? It
should be primarily that. I think, yes, yes, you should teach. But when Jesus is talking about teaching, to observe all that I have commanded you, he's primarily thinking the things that we just did together. So think of the book of Matthew and all the stuff Jesus taught his disciples. This wasn't like sitting in a classroom where he's like, go do all the stuff that I've taught you. Teach others to do that. Keep the things I have commanded you, which on the disciples' front of mind would have been mission. That's what would have been front of mind. What did Jesus teach? Well, we got to go reach the world. The kingdom of God is coming. So that's how the disciples would have thought about that, is like, oh, we got to go basically replicate what Jesus did, which is what they do in Acts. So that is primary, though. No, obviously, I went to seminary twice. Like
that's what I was gonna say. We've sat in a lot of classrooms.
I am big on that. My thing is, that's already assumed. You don't have to convince any Christian. They need to study the Bible, learn, be with other Christians. These things are all, and maybe one day they won't be. I think, at least in the Western world we live in, very assumed, and people assume that's discipleship. So I don't have to fight against nothing on that. People already think that. Mm-hmm. So what I'm doing is trying to counterbalance it and say, well, no, it's much more yes and.
Yes, and is what you're saying, not no to that. Yeah.
And I do think their weight should be way more on the living, the doing, than the learning. Because here's what I also find in Christian circles, and this is even strategically why City Light does like sermon-based questions in lighthouses.
That's the weekly small groups.
Right. Is I find, this is how Christians do it. They learn something on Sunday. But if they learn something new on Tuesday, they don't have to apply or even reflect on what they learned on Sunday. And then if they learn something else new on Friday, from like let's say they go to like a Sunday service and then a Tuesday night lighthouse and then like a women's event on Friday. And if all we're doing is learning becomes an excuse for living. So because I've learned so much, I must be becoming like Christ. Actually, you might be getting worse. Because if all you do is learn and don't apply, you're getting bloated. You're spiritually fat. So, and I think that happens a ton. And Jesus wants obedience. He wants action. And he actually, it's like a Pharisee. It's like if you learn and don't apply, that learning is leading you the opposite direction. It's not making you more like Jesus, it's making you less like Jesus. And people, because learning feels like discipleship, they just learn and then they go learn and then they go learn.
Yeah.
And they don't do or live. And therefore they don't grow. And churches then provide environments where people can just keep coming and learning. And it's like, no, I want you to learn some, and then I want you to spend a lot of time living, applying, reflecting, thinking. Mm-hmm. Okay, then go learn a little bit more and go and think, So I think, especially in the Western world, we are fat on content and learning and very skinny on obedience.
Yeah. And there's no irony to doing this in the form of content right now. We're fat on content with mics in our face.
This content is to get you to go live alive.
I literally just texted that to a friend this morning. Like, I definitely thought my life in ministry would be in a village in Africa, but I'm going to sit in front of microphones all morning. Doubt. And you know what?
Once again, it's yes and. There is room for this stuff.
Yes. Okay, that gives a broad...
And you even have conversations. I even wrestle with whether things like this are really useful. In the extent where, like, there's a ton of stuff out there. Let's just focus on, like, going and doing stuff. Right, because plenty of people have already said everything we're going to say. We're not, like, geniuses or people who come up with new things. Mm-hmm. Nothing's new under the sun. So then you fight against... But obviously, we've come to the conclusion that a part of a pastoral ministry is to be able to provide an extension of that on Sundays to this kind of thing. So I do view this as, like, a ministry for our people, not, like, extra content in the world.
Right. Discipleship tool.
Is my rant over?
Yeah, no, I love it. You do have a really high IQ, though. I'll just tell the people. So you're not
disagree with my rant. Send us a question. Ask me.
Okay, so that gives a broader scope of of practice or of thinking or of theology on it. But what about just let's just say, okay, everyone's like, okay, cool, but like I'm a person. Am I being discipled? How do I disciple others?
Yeah.
Also. So speaking to that, but I'm also, as you're talking, thinking like when I was in high school, I was discipled by a leader that I feel like genuinely changed my life, that she would pursue me to sit and study God's word and have the accountability to check in and the fun together and kind of like this, life together while shaping and cultivating my walk and life changing. Now, you have also talked about how you never had anyone disciple you, and I know you have things to say about that. In that,
the way people would assume it. So like there's one person who sat down with me, never. But I had a faithful dad.
And mom.
I have a great, and mom, of course, and I had a great... I have great in-laws. I have great people. I've always had great people around me.
Yeah, so...
that are older and can invest. But.
And you saw... But can you speak to that? Like, looking back in your past, I know there were times, especially like you're saying, identifying Christian circles, where you felt like that was... no one ever discipled me. How you felt about it? What did disciple you? Was that needed? Was that a problem? Why did that happen? Do people need to expect that? Is it a problem if they don't have it? You've talked a fair amount about that, and obviously so much is God's grace in your life. Like the Lord can use anyone or no one to bring people to faith and to sharpen their faith. But what's your kind of thoughts on that if you tap in?
I know so you may answer that before the
you know what?
tools
It's
question.
up to you.
You
I'm
just
just
really
asking
just
you so
spitfiring
much.
so much
Whichever you want to
in
touch
my
on
brain.
first.
To be fair, I wasn't zealous for God in high school. So if I had someone like Jess that you had, maybe that would have.
But your mom made you sit down and read the Bible with her every morning, right?
Oh, she did. Boy, did she ever. No, I have super faithful parents, and that obviously is huge. I mean, you can't outweigh that. Yeah, no,
But
my dad was a
adulthood.
pastor. I had a ton of, let's call it spiritual inputs.
Yes.
But I had never been close to any pastor, youth pastor, middle school pastor. I was always in a mega church, so I never really knew the pastor. So I never had that at any level, high school, college, never had that. I always had my parents once again, but I never had, let's call it like a mentor. Never. Can't name anybody. When I came to walk with the Lord in college, I was learning that along with my peers. There wasn't a peer that I had
to look up to.
I was like on fire, right? And I fell into leadership, even like starting Bible studies and becoming the spiritual leader. So ever since then, I've always been the spiritual leader everywhere I go, and you're probably the closest person to like someone I met that was ahead of me that could pour back into me.
Okay.
That's probably honestly,
this is news to me, guys.
When I met you, you were far more mature and had followed Jesus more seriously. And I had grew up in the faith and loved God, but I just hadn't really hit that go button yet till college, and you were ahead of me. And
to be clear, I wasn't okay with that. Dating that, I was
I was still a Christian.
Yeah,
I
were
wasn't.
growing.
Yeah. That's fair.
Yeah.
You weren't dating an unbeliever. So you certainly had a big role like that. But yeah, I've never had anything like that. And so there's not like any pride. There's not like, maybe that's bad, but sometimes I think people feel so, I don't know if needy is the right word. I don't like that word. Like, someone disciple me, and it's like, why don't you just go follow Jesus? And if you see somebody that you respect, ask them. Or if you really want that, pray.
That the Lord would bring
someone. Or go get involved. Like, maybe that the environments, let's say even my buddies, who none of them, they all love God though, but they all had different levels of maturity when I started to grow. But what is it? I'm sure in God's eyes too, they're helping form my faith as we kind of like joke around, but sort of get serious about Jesus together. It doesn't have to be like this some old saint that like is pouring back in, and that's great. But I just think everybody has this. They're just waiting on something, it seems to me, or refusing to self-feed, or misidentifying. Like, I legitimately believe I got discipled in some form or fashion by guys like John Piper. I mean, I grew so much. I've never met him. When I tried to meet him, he didn't shake my hand.
Oh my gosh. Can we tell that story really quick?
Yes. Well,
you don't want to? Is it still touchy 20 years later?
Touchy. So John Piper, let's say, as a preacher, had the biggest impact in my life as like a person I've never met.
And let's just paint the picture that you were working landscaping. Like, you were in those
I was listening to sermons,
muscle shirt tank tops you would cut.
Looking good.
It was barely a shirt at all.
With those tan lines.
Just listening.
That's why you kept dating me. She saw me pull up on that mower and she thought,
yeah, right. I was already too far deep by then. I didn't have a choice. But no, you were listening to John Piper. I mean, he really did. He
changed a lot of people's lives. So I would be thrown into that category. And I'd never heard preaching like that. The idea of enjoying God, never thought of. Even that Psalm 16:11, which I love, which is a Bible verse. It's not John Piper's verse, but he unlocked that for me. Desiring God, the book. I mean, you name it. Just awesome. So I was hugely impacted by that. Like, hugely. And you can't underestimate, like, it's this discipleship. He influenced me towards Jesus. Mm-hmm. But I tried to, he was preaching at Summit Church, which is where we went in Raleigh. And I'm super, like,
neither of us are.
Not like, what do you call it? Fanboying. Yeah, I don't even like to even be perceived or to, I don't even want to get close to that. Like, he's a man, I'm a man. Yeah. But, so he came to preach, and people stood in line to say hello. And I wasn't going to do that.
I made him do it.
Because I was like, I appreciate him, but I'm not going to take time to do that.
Yeah.
And then you were like, he's impacted you so much, you should at least go just tell him thank you. It would be the honorable thing to do. Imagine how encouraging that would be to him. Totally. Yeah. I'm sure he gets that a lot. But yes. So I thought, okay, that's probably the right thing to do. So I go wait in line with all the fanboys, And literally it gets down, I'm like near the back, and it gets down to the end.
But our friend is his like usher.
His handler, would call it. So one of my good friends was his handler, like driving him around and he was on staff, right? And I literally, it's my turn. John Piper's a few feet away. I extend my hand. This is like a real scenario. I extend my hand. Middle. I'm here. My hand is empty. And John looks at me, and then the handler guy,
our friend,
taps him on the shoulder and whispers something in his ear. And then John Piper looks back at me with like little sad but intense John Piper eyes, kind. And he just says, sorry. And he doesn't shake my hand, and he walks away.
And he was like,
and I'm literally standing there like this.
It was so classic.
And I was so mad that you told me to go do that. Because now I look like an idiot.
But we're also like, friend, what the heck?
Yeah,
like, we literally like lead your small group every week.
You know who you are. Who did that to me?
Yeah.
John Piper, if you ever hear this, come visit City Light. You can preach anytime.
But also we get it. At some point, the line has to end. It was just funny given the friend, so me.
John Piper was at like 100 and then he got knocked down to like a 94 after that.
Man, even the people that disciple you fail sometimes.
Hey, they're all sinners.
There's a word.
There's a word.
Okay, so continue though.
This is getting way out of hand. What were we saying? So anyways, people like that, peers, being in the right environments, even let's just say liberty as a spiritually conducive environment. If you so choose to go to the right places at Liberty, it has what you need to be able to grow.
Well, any Christian ministry, that's just where you went. But
I was at Liberty. I'm just saying, obviously you can choose the wrong way anywhere, but Liberty has a ton of options if you want to grow. Reading, I would just say all of that is discipling me, and I think people just underlook or underestimate this huge view of discipleship, and they're only looking for that older to younger, which once again is biblical and great.
And I think you should seek it. Like if you want that, ask someone.
Once again, I'm from my perspective, that's assumed.
Yeah.
And then people feel lost without it sometimes, and I just want to broaden your perspective.
Right.
And as you look back on your life, I would say, there's 100 different ways I got discipled. So no, I don't feel like I lacked anything. So we do, obviously discipleship can be ambiguous. We want to help people do it. And so in our basic training, one of the tools we use is just you disciple somebody, influencing them towards Jesus. There's 3 words: by evangelism, by example, and by investment.
That's good.
So this is going to hit every category of making a disciple, from the lost to the believer. So once again, people think discipleship is for believers. No. Discipleship is the word God uses as the command to go do. So discipleship starts with unbelievers. That's what's called evangelism. So when we think about evangelism, we're representing Jesus, for sharing the gospel. So as you evangelize, you are attempting to make disciples. The second thing is example. So Paul says, 1 Corinthians, imitate me as I imitate Christ. So you see this throughout. So discipleship is living by example so people can model your life. Obviously, that requires proximity. That's why things like lighthouses and being a part of a local church and having community are important so that your life can be modeled. So you should be living in a way that people can follow, and you should be around people who live in a way that you can follow. And you would say, even when you think about discipleship, let's say like whatever, I hate the word, but like leading City Light, and
you hate the word leading?
Well, I just don't. I'm a part of City Light, but I'm also in the shepherd role. But the people would view it as me discipling everyone else. That's how people I think view it, is like Nate. So then who disciples Nate? And the answer is all of us. Like we are growing together. As I live in a community of believers, I am learning constantly by their example. By the example of single people, married people, young people, older people. I'm amongst of the body of Christ. Therefore, I am always being discipled by the example other people set. So anyway, it's just well-rounded, It's not just like, somebody sits down with Nate and explains him the way. No, it's like I go to church with godly people and I learn. So I think that's true for everyone that goes to a godly church. Like you are being discipled 100 different ways. So you example is the second thing, and then the third thing is investment, and that's the one that I think people assume. That's the one people are used to. It's the 2 Timothy 2, teach faithful men, instruct them what I've taught you so they can teach others. So it's like tell these 3 guys what to do, teach them my ways, and then those 3 guys should go teach 3 other guys. And that's what I think people usually refer to. So I would say the investment is what the Western church assumes, and usually what people are looking for when they ask me about discipleship. Mm-hmm. And I want to add those other 2 categories of evangelism and setting the example, and then having those 3 things create a well-rounded thing. So that's one way that's more of an evaluative tool maybe. Mm-hmm. And then the second thing is just a phrase, make. So it's make disciples. And so we
know you love an acronym.
It's an acronym. So if this will help you, M stands for move with purpose and or meet regularly. Okay, I needed 2 M's on that. Move with purpose, meaning you can't make disciples by accident. You don't share the gospel by accident. You don't live a life worthy of example by accident. You don't intentionally invest in people by accident. You don't lead a lighthouse by accident. You don't ask Joe to meet up by accident.
I think this is important with what you're saying, because some of this stuff that you're saying, because you know the pendulum, you're swinging to the other side. Yeah. But it can sound like, well, you just show up at church, you're being discipled. But you're saying, no, that you move with purpose. Everything. You are asking people to disciple you. You are investing in people in a way. Totally, yes. You are leading by example. You are living, doing life with people in order to walk with them and them walk with you. Yes. And the same way that you also, yes, you're being discipled by the church, but you also are reaching out to people like, how do we parent a teen through this? How do I lead a church through this? Like you have elders and boards.
Buddies I respect, boards, elders,
Yeah,
everybody. Always learning.
The investment piece is there. You're not walking in and out of church and saying, I'm being discipled. That's not what you're getting at. Right. So, okay, the M's.
So move with purpose. So you should have people in your life. You should be making choices. And to meet regularly with somebody, some way, somehow. So once again, that's what we do lighthouses for, which are our groups during the week. But meet regularly with people. Yeah. You got to build those relationships. So that's M. A is assess their spiritual condition. Uh-huh. So once again, if I'm talking to a friend who's lost, or if I'm talking to a staff member who is mature but obviously has areas of growth, or I'm talking to a person at church who's a little bit unsure, or my children, you always need to assess spiritual condition, meaning that even there's a few people in this room, what each of us need is different. You can't just copy paste like, I don't like that sometimes about how people think about curriculums or discipleship. Like every person is different, and I need to assess, okay, for my evangelism, what's their hold up? I'm not just I'll share the gospel, but I also want to try to share it in a way that's useful to you. You have different reasons for not believing. Or, okay, this particular sin struggle is what's holding this person back from growing, or this lack of knowledge. So you want to be intentional to assess their spiritual condition. So if you're a lighthouse leader, you should be assessing the spiritual condition of your people. If you're trying to lead a friend towards Christ, you should have an assessment of their current spiritual condition. So that's A. So if you're going to disciple somebody, you have to influence them towards Jesus, which means you have to know where they're at with Jesus. So that requires assessment. K then is the Matthew 28, teach them to keep the commands. So that's keep. And you want to help them keep commands. So that involves 2 things. 1, an evaluation of where they haven't, which some people call accountability. Okay, you're missing the mark here. These are commands you're not keeping. And ways to encourage or bring conviction around that. And then it also involves equipping or helping them keep commands proactively. So once again, when people think about holiness, they primarily think about stop sinning as opposed to proactive living. Like holiness involves sharing the gospel just as much as it involves not being mean with your words. These 2 things are equal in terms of me being holy. So if I'm going to keep God's commands, I must run away from the negatives and pursue the positives. Mm-hmm. So you're, once again, assessing, you're discussing those things. And then E is to equip. And that, once again, is with tools for them to go make disciples. So what I'm doing with you, you go do with them. We need some encouragement. Let's say it this way. Every discipleship relationship should morph, and it should never be the same. Meaning that if you're always needing the same person at the same level, they haven't trained you to go do what you're supposed to do. It almost like they should, end is a strong word, but they should sort of like, Paul didn't have the same relationship with Timothy forever. Like, it's this idea that they grow and you send them to go do stuff. So there should just be an equipping and it should morph, it should grow, and you should send them to go do what you did for them.
Yeah. I mean, that reminds me of just within the past year when you were waking up at 6 and someone asked you to FaceTime them to show you like literally what does your time with the Lord look
that's
like?
a good example.
And you were FaceTiming at 6 a.m. every morning, and eventually you were like, okay, grasshopper.
I'm not going to do this all the time. Yeah.
He's like, wait, we can't keep doing this? You're like,
no, go do it.
But then he started doing it with someone else, and that has really helped that person. So it's not necessarily a permanent fixture of how it's done. Now you're still in a relationship with him. Yeah, it's a good example.
That was probably 2 weeks of like showing an example, and then like it's not complicated.
Yeah.
Now go do it. And we
to
keep
you,
up.
It's not complicated. To them, it can feel big, and then that's when you break it down. So.
No, it's a good.
Okay, this is good. I feel like you're not on the hot seat as much as you're putting everyone else on the hot seat for what their
feel the burn.
presuppositions are. But what is
big words.
What is the expectation? Like someone listening to this and is like, okay, am I discipling people? What should I be doing? Do I need to go ask someone to pour into them? Do I bring them to my kids' sports games? Do I ask them for lunch at work? Like, what does it look like? If the Lord says go and make disciples, how do I assess where I am, what I am to do? You spoke to like pouring into you. Sometimes you have control over, sometimes you don't. Like seek out those relationships. If there's no one to your right or your left, pray for it and like self-seek the Lord's discipleship and through different means. But where we do have control of who we're discipling, what are the expectations?
Well, once again, another tool, and you it's a visual one, so you'd have to go online, but it's called a My City map. And this is where even when people first get saved, this is how I help them think about what to do next. Is you draw a circle, and then you have little lines that go to other circles. And in the middle circle is your name, and then the other circles include the names of those that God has put in your life that you can influence towards Jesus. And usually if people are just getting saved, almost all those people are unsaved. So it's evangelism. A lot of times in our lives, as your life expands, you would have multiple circles. Like I have a family circle that has your name and all our kids and how am I influencing them? Then I have like a church circle, and that involves a lot of different things with staff and then congregants. And then I have a friend circle and people that I know. So, and neighborhood circle, and those people in there like, okay, how am I? So it's the idea of now I have names of people that are in my life that I have responsibility for or should take responsibility for. And then I just have to think, okay, how can I influence them towards Jesus? Do I need to invite them out or just be intentional next time I see them to ask them if they're still thinking about Jesus? Or, particular people who are walking with God, okay, be more intentional to do that assessing, keeping, equipping work. So everybody has, let's call it a sphere of influence. It may be small, you might only be one or two, but that's how you always start. I always encourage people to start with the disciple making. And it's almost like the discipling kind of comes. So yeah, if you go ask somebody, all of that. But if you go do the things God asks you to do, He will provide what you need to do that. Yeah. So I would use that. It's a tool on the website, on the basic training booklet. It's really helpful.
And I think it's another area where we can really pray specifically to the Lord for wisdom. Like if I'm identifying man Nate, I would really like to pour into. Does he need to go through a workbook? Does he need Theology 101? Does he need to come over and just be in my life at night, watching life lived, modeling it? Is there a time we can catch lunch to be more intentional? Do I need to voice text him every day to check in? Like assess where it's at and act accordingly. But there's not like, if you're not doing this, this isn't, discipleship. And I also just want to close with a quick word to moms. Obviously it's a small percentage, I think it's like 5% of your life is with your kids 0 to 5. Obviously, if you have many kids like us, it's a little longer. Yeah. So it is a unique season of your life. Although once a mom, always a mom. So it's determinative always. But to the moms of littles, which we have a lot of, I think this can feel like, who am I? How do I do this? But looking at your acronym of the investment, example, and evangelism, this type of thinking and priority makes motherhood so purposeful. So even if you're like, man, I've always poured into people and now I'm home with my kids or working and then home with my kids, or I just don't have the margin to be meeting with people as much or out as much. I want this to raise your vision of the purpose of motherhood and the power in it, or fatherhood as well, because hopefully your schedule is a little different now that you have kids, to say, no, I can be what I'm modeling to them in how I parent is so foundational, even in my mistakes of how we disciple them through repair of mistakes. My investment in them really matters because I'm discipling them, influencing them towards Jesus.
Yeah,
so not to belittle that, and also recognizing that as parents, there are people we get put in places that we wouldn't otherwise if we weren't spheres of influence. So the teacher at your kid's preschool, or at that little soccer game, or in the neighborhood, or at the pool, wherever God has you is where he has you serving and leading. And so to just kind of raise your vision, yes, it's literally hard to even have a conversation when you're with your kids and focus on them and enjoying them, but also just pray to raise your vision. And I think there's just enjoyment and purpose in God's plans for you as parent, or also wherever you are. If you're like, I'm working 60 hours a week, I don't even know how to fit it in, or I'm a first responder, my schedule's crazy, just like pray the Lord would lift your eyes to see where you're at and what he does have for you, where to invest and where to seek investment from others.
Yeah. Amen. A word to moms, which I will not add anything to because I'm not a mother.
It's to parents also. Obviously, it's roles.
No, word. You said it, though. That's very good.
Okay.
All right.
That's awesome.
Go make disciples. Go be the light of the world. See you later.